After being granted formal independence from the United States in 1920 after years of colonial rule, Cuba experienced decades of political instability. Former soldier Fulgencio Batista was eventually elected president of Cuba from 1940 to 1944 after running a populist campaign. After his term ended, he moved to Florida, but returned to Cuba in 1952 to run for president a second time. Realizing he would lose, he led a US-backed coup and canceled national elections, becoming a military dictator from 1952 to 1959. Batista was indifferent to the concerns of the people during his second term, ignoring Cuba's high unemployment rate and failing water infrastructure. He was linked to organized crime, allowed American companies to dominate his nation's economy, and was a strong anti-communist. Young lawyer and activist Fidel Castro petitioned to overthrow Batista, but was largely ignored by the government. Realizing he would not succeed via legal means, he and his brother Raul decided to launch a revolution, eventually taking over the government in 1958 and turning the nation into a socialist state. Eventually, the new government formed close ties with the Soviet Union, which worsened their already fraught relationship with the United States.
The assault has begun on the dictatorship of Fidel Castro.
In April 1961, the American CIA backed rebel group Brigades 2506's mission to invade northern Cuba in an attempt to overthrow Castro's government. The group led the armed wing of the Democratic Revolutionary Front and was made up of mostly Cuban exiles that fled to the U.S. after Castro's takeover, but also included some U.S. military personnel. As the mission became public knowledge, the U.S. decided to abandon the plan halfway through, resulting in the group being captured. It took place over the course of 3 days. The event strengthened Castro's leadership and contributed to the Cuban Missile Crisis. To deter further invasion attempts, Cuba requested nuclear missiles from the Soviet Union in 1962. The launch sites were approved, but shortly after construction started, the U.S. produced photographic evidence of their existence, prompting them to create a naval blockade to stop Russia from delivering the weapons. They also demanded that Cuba destroy any already in their possession. An agreement was finally reached after days of tense negotiation. Publicly, the USSR agreed to take back the missiles from Cuba in return for the U.S. agreeing to no further invasions of Cuba. Secretly, the U.S. would also need to dismantle their missiles in Turkey. The U.S. also had missiles in Italy, but it is unsure if these were included in the agreement. After all missiles were removed from Cuba, the U.S. ended their blockade. This 13-day crisis was the climax of the Cold War, and the closest the world has ever been to a nuclear war. As such, it established the Moscow-Washington hotline that acts as a direct communication line between the two nations.